while watching this season, I had this thought where there's no way it could top season 4. And while watching some episodes, I had this thought where, yeah, when I do the season recap with the top 10 episodes, there's going to be like 3 or 4, and the rest, it's all going to be, we're going to pick the losers here. But then after finishing it and going through all the episodes on IMDb, holy shit, the season was great. I was completely surprised because I totally expected it to be not as good as season 4. And maybe because the low lows were so low where I got like very upset about it, but I forgot about how many great episodes are in this season.
Yeah, for me, it was very much like a 50-50 where there are some, but not a lot, of episodes that are good to me, but not amazing. I find that a little under half of the season is like on the range of really good to one of my favorites. And there are a few episodes in this season that are some of my favorites thus far in the show. And then that drop off, though, there is a lot more misses in this one, in my opinion, than the last 2 seasons. So I guess that's the difference on how I felt about it, is there weren't a ton of episodes here that I just felt like, yeah, I enjoyed this one, but it wasn't like that great. It was either I'm into it or I was not into it.
The banger of all bangers, the S of all S's, Redemption 2, and then everything just slowly drifting down. Not a big steep down, just a slow drift down with and then the time episode with the time traveler, the Silicon Avatar. It's like and then unification. But I don't know if this is a fair comparison. But while thinking about it, I thought this is very similar to just a way pumped up comparison of season 1 and 2 of TNG, where season 1 was like pretty flat, but it had some good ones, or season 2 had some high highs and some fucking low lows. Season 4 and 5 feel like that on steroids, like much better.
Yeah, I think season 2 is probably the best correlation in terms of the roller coaster. That's what this season felt like. It's interesting based on what you said, because putting my list together, which we're going to get into, I wished there were a few more high highs. I think maybe what changed my perspective is I put this list together, and once I finalized it, I went back and looked at season 4 just to compare, and immediately I was just like, oh, this is a banger, 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 banger. And I'm like, this season, like I said, very top heavy, some of my favorites. And then there was just a lot in here that I don't know how excited I would be to rewatch it when I go to rewatch the show. Mm-hmm. So by no means was it bad, but yeah, I definitely feel like season 4, in my opinion, is still probably my favorite. This just is in no way like a big step down. And looking at it from an episodic lens, there are some amazing episodes in here that are some of my favorites. So, yeah, it's been quite an interesting season.
Yeah, I call season 4 the all-star team, and season 5 is the team with 4 or 5 really good players, and the rest are all, they're banking off those other players.
It's like LeBron, Kevin Love.
I was going to say LeBron. LeBron, Kevin Love,
and Kyrie.
And Kyrie. That's season 5. And then season 4 is the Olympics.
Yeah, or season 4 is the Golden State Warriors with Kevin Durant. Season 5 is the 2016 Cavs.
That's the perfect comparison.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
You non-Ohioans are probably like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. Well, none of them watch sports either. It's okay.
But overall, I think with this season, I'm very happy with it. I'm trying to think where I think, people said, some of my favorites were in season 5. I don't think... Did people say it was their favorite season? I can't remember.
I'm sure there may be a few out there, but it definitely wasn't the prevailing thought. A lot of people, I think, said the second half really goes up, and I can agree that I think outside of Redemption 2, most of my favorites of the season are in that second half, especially after Star Trek 6, which was between episode 9 and 10. You did have Unification, Redemption 2, a couple others that were pretty good, but we did start getting those bangers in the second half, and even though some of them maybe we didn't think were out of the park amazing as they are widely perceived, I still think it was mostly good episodes. Before I forget, we need to talk about the addition of Ensign Ro this season. Played by Michelle Forbes, one of my favorite characters of the show. Every time she showed up, it was delightful. She was not in a bad episode, and I don't think that's a coincidence.
Mm-hmm. And you pretty much manifested her. We need we need an ensign or we need a member of the crew that's kind of a bit of an attitude.
I don't want to be here any more than you want me to be here, sir.
Michelle Forbes just, after finishing shooting with the Timothy episode, she's like, you know what? I want to be on this show for Josh. And yeah, she is an absolute delight and just adds that extra edge that we needed. Because for the most part, with the exception of Riker, everyone's pretty much really nice most of the time. Everyone's a good sport. But Ensign Rowe comes on and she's got this, I don't give a shit attitude. And it's amazing.
You are trying to turn me into your idea of the model officer.
The rules on this ship do not change just because Ro Laren decides they do.
And her scenes with Riker are absolutely great. And they're leading us to something. I don't know, because Riker was going to say something at her supposed funeral. So hopefully that's answered in season 6. But with the addition of Ensign Rowe and how great she is, we got to comment about the missing chief. Maybe they pulled him out because so many episodes relied on problems with the transporter. So like, we can't have Chief have problems with the transporter. Sorry, Cullum, but you're benched. Like, what is he doing right now?
I don't know, but we had gotten some comments when we asked about that he is a popular actor, and I guess he is in a lot of movies in the 90s, so it's not like he's a nobody, he could have had stuff to do. With that being said, he's not, in the opening title credits, and he's not a main character. He's kind of on the level of an Ensign Rowe or Guinan, who also was absent for a lot of this season. It felt like, at least. I don't know the episode count. All three of those characters, their additions when they were there were really great, and it's always better to maybe miss them a little bit than to overstay their welcome.
With any of those characters, I don't think they can overstay. I like them too much. I mean, maybe it's a possibility, but maybe they did treat it right, where it's better to miss them than to have them all the time and get sick of them. But I don't see that happening, in my opinion, because I love them all to death. And speaking of Guinan, I think this was probably her best showing this season as well, an Iborg.
If you are going to use this person to destroy his race, you should at least look him in the eye once.
Especially adding more depths and layers to her, where it's not just... I'm not saying there's anything wrong with her, wisdom in the bar, but seeing the other side of her personality, getting the one-up Picard, being upset, where someone else like Geordi gets the last line. Yeah, they've won up their game in that sense.
Yeah, I think Guinan has definitely had great moments this season. Iborg, though, is just another level for her character in so many ways. We finally see the reverse of she's always owning everybody, getting the last word. Geordi then getting the last word on her.
Because I wouldn't have anything to say.
Then why don't you just listen? That is what you do best, isn't it?
Followed by then her scene with the Borg character. Hugh, and then her scene with Picard. All of it was so amazing. I mean, you really see a full character arc with her almost in one episode. I mean, that is character growth from starting the episode being outraged about them keeping this Borg or not killing the Borg when they have the chance to the end where she flips. And I'm sure we'll talk about that episode later specifically, but she had great moments. And then even in lesser episodes, like she was in, what could be our least favorite of the season, possibly Imaginary Friend, where she talks about her imaginary friend. And even in a bad episode, she has a nice moment. And I feel like that's what's great about these recurring characters that we didn't get in TOS or really early TNG at all, is that, and I'm not necessarily talking about once a season characters like Majel Barrett or Q or anything, but the ones that are there every now and then to where you do believe they live on the Enterprise, even Alexander to an extent this season, later on, you believe they're there even when they're not in the episode. And then when they show up, it's really a great addition.
Yeah, they really help supplement some bad episodes for sure. They're that little glimmer of hope in an episode like Imaginary Friend. Well, at least they can help me get through this episode. They're really great tools for that. And they're all great. They're all interesting characters, and I love them all. Speaking of Hugh, we have to talk about the flip side of that. I don't think Q was anywhere in this season.
No, he was not. And first season of these first 5 that he's not in any of it. Don't know behind the scenes reasons. Did they just not write an episode for him? Was he busy? I don't know. I didn't hate it. I mean, I don't think it doesn't have to be like a requirement, checklist. Like, okay, we need Loaxana, we need Q, we need Vash, we need these. It's like I'm glad that the last time we saw him and the last time we saw Vash was in Cupid last season. If either of them ever come back, it's nice that it's not. Get some time to miss him. Like I said with the recurring characters, but even more so with Q. I feel like I didn't like Cupid, and I didn't really care for Deja Q. You liked that more than me. Maybe give him some time, retool it, whatever they bring up for him. I know Q, whether it's John Delancey or Q as an idea, I know that's not going away in Star Trek anytime soon. So whatever they decide to do, I hope it's interesting and fun, whenever that happens.
I have a feeling he's going to show up in the season 6 intro, not season 6 opener.
In the episode or in the hook specifically?
It'd be pretty good if he was in the hook, in my opinion. But
Be a good hook.
it would be a good hook, especially not being in season 5 at all. I don't know, but yeah, I do enjoy that. It doesn't need to be like a checklist. Okay, we need our Dorf episode. We need our Majel Barrett episode. They don't have to get everybody on that list. Sometimes they can leave a couple out.
Because it was starting to feel that way a little bit. Especially, you had Loxana Troy, Q, and as much as I love him, Dixon Hill. It felt like those were the three things of we have to revisit that every season. And no Dixon Hill this season either. Clues was the last time we saw anything with him, with Whoopi Goldberg, if I'm correct, unless you could think of something.
That was last season?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. That's good because it get a bit. In the moment, I would be really excited, but in hindsight, I'd probably be okay. We shouldn't have to do this every season. There's other things we can explore here, similar to the Cold War.
Oh my God! And the sense of diminishing returns is not something that you want either. It's something with Dixon Hill. You think about The Big Goodbye, amazing episode in the first season of the show, and every time since then they brought him back, I've loved it, but it hasn't had like a fully focused episode. And I think the reason for that is because could they top The Big Goodbye? Maybe. But it would be hard with that same premise, that same character. I'd love to see him do it. I'd love to see him try. We'll see if it ever comes back again in this show, at least. And that brings me to, in season 4, one thing I really respected, kind of in that same vein, is that they were not safe this season, I don't think. Like, were there some episodes where it was like, yeah, this is a TV show with 26 episodes, we need some contract filler? Sure. I think any show with 26 episodes is going to have that, especially in its 5th season. But for the most part, this felt a lot like the Star Trek of TOS in the sense of purely episodic, different themes, stories every episode. You have stuff like Iborg in the same season with Imaginary Friends. As a matter of fact, back to back. In things such as Unification, even though it's a 2-parter. Redemption 2, Ethics. These are all wildly different stories and themes, and it doesn't feel like just going through. As much as I'm loving The Expanse right now, we're watching it, there is a sense where every episode you go to watch, it's let's pick up that continuation RPG video game from last time, right? Not that that's bad or good, but it's just different than this. It really reminded me of that feeling of, what are we getting into this week?
I love how completely different it is and how it tackles, could be something completely stupid and ridiculous like the game, or tackle something completely big and heavy like the episode with Riker and the androgynous species. What was that episode called?
The Outcast.
The Outcast, yeah, where it's like some really super heavy stuff and some really dumb stuff. It was a roller coaster. And that was the fun part with the technology and how not every episode is going to be what does a ship run into, what's in the ship that we can't see that's causing all this mess. That does happen in episodes like Imaginary Friend, but then just a fun idea. What if the whole crew just lost their memories? What if the crew just where it's not even like a named enemy? What if the ship just shut down and there's 5 different groups and we get to follow how each one of these 5 separate groups of random people figure this out? I love that idea. It's just a simple idea and then make an episode about it. Instead of it doesn't always need to be this huge narrative like Unification. We could also have just this one, like cause and effect. One episode in time, one moment, one problem. That's it.
Yeah, 100% agree. I think because of that, and because the stories were so creative, there was not a huge imprint this season of those recurring villains we're used to. Like Romulans, Klingons, the Borg, Cardassians, they were all in it. Even Ferengi were in it in the season. But none of them felt like in seasons past a main focus. I think back to last season, it really feels like the Cardassians, in The Wounded, right? Like that's a huge villain episode. Or in prior seasons was something like the introduction of the Borg. It's here the villains were parts of the episodes, but it felt really like we were following the Enterprise most of the time, and the villains out there were just this thing that existed and sometimes got involved. in the next phase with the Romulans getting involved with the shenanigans with Geordi and Ensign Rowe. But that's not the point of the episode, really. The point is what Ensign Rowe and Geordi are, going through. And I think I liked that. I mean, I would say I did miss, more of that villain threat, but Iborg was just so damn good that even though he was not a villain, that did give us that a little bit with the Borg. But what did you think about it?
Yeah, besides unification, not having a main through line villain, because I want to say last season it was kind of building up to Sela, right?
Yeah.
And this season it was more of the other side of having a big villain. Instead of like the Borg being the big villain, what if we just had one Borg? And the whole thing was, can we separate this person? And is it a person? Do we treat it like a person? And that whole idea is extremely fascinating to me. Not the whole, he's a villain, he's misunderstood, but just separating one person from it. Not going full that whole way. I love that Romulans are still just completely evil, no matter what they're doing. Not completely evil, I should say. Because in Unification we saw some. Oh, also in Unification there were some good ones there. But yeah, I like how there isn't any main villain through line, because that feels very mixed bag, where there's some that are good, some that are bad. I don't like this whole, my side versus their side. Starfleet versus the Klingons or versus Romulans. Like, I like when it's ugly. I like how it's more like real life, how there's good and bad people on both sides. And boys, there's some bad people in Starfleet. were there any people in Starfleet this season where it's like, oh, you fucking... Ensign Rowe, that fucking guy. The guy was a...
the admiral that sent her there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he wasn't a dope. He was
He's legit evil.
yeah. Because he was getting like funded for something, right? What was the story? Yeah.
Yeah, it's something to do with that civil war that was going on with the Bajora or Bajorans or whatever.
Like you, Admiral. Naive enough to solve their Bajoran problem for them.
The lady from Silicon Avatar. Did she work for Starfleet? I think she was just
A scientist that
a
they
scientist.
brought in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She sucks.
I mean, if there's one thing that's for sure. If there's an outside character that comes in and they're the antagonist or the foil of that episode, you're going to hate them. I think that's fair.
I understand that's what the episode wants me to feel. The time traveling guy. I understand it. It just doesn't. I just hate him. I'm sorry. It's like I understand that's what they want me to feel, but
yeah, I mean it's not a bad thing.
like, I understand it. I get it, and it's working because I fucking hate them.
Yeah, the guy in Conundrum, the memory loss episode.
Oh yeah.
Hated him. Obviously, there's the fine line between are you hating them because they're the villain or is it go away heat because it's a bad performance or writing stupid or whatever. So that depends on the character. But going all the way back to TOS, I mean, admirals, badmirals, they've always been a meme or anyone associated with Starfleet or anything like that. So that's something that's been consistent. To go back to what you were saying real quick on that through line piece, I really most of the time do agree. I think the one weakness of it is that this end of the season did kind of feel like TOS in the sense of, the season's over. Also, the episode sucked. But even putting aside that the episode sucked, there was nothing that was building this season. It felt like because of Star Trek VI and putting unification so early in the season, that was really the only storyline blow-off we had. Now, I don't know what happens, but if I were to guess, I don't think Sela's coming back. I think that was the story.
Not bad.
Maybe. I mean, they don't kill her. She doesn't get arrested. So maybe she comes back. I don't know. But it felt, as we got on, even though the second half of the season did get better episode by episode, it just then ended and reminded me of that TOS feeling. And last season, it was a Worf storyline through the whole thing, to the point where Redemption 1 had that cliffhanger, and that set up Redemption 2 to be this perfect episode. Mm-hmm. And I think that's just one of the things lost in translation is like, what character here from this season are we now looking forward to? It doesn't really feel like there was what Worf had last season with any of these characters. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. And I'm sure the release of Star Trek VI, maybe that had something to do with the order the episodes released, because I think Unification 1 and 2 would have been a much better season finale than what we got. And the fact that the finale here was the finale, I'm like, that's the finale? Because I talked about it in the video, but that episode was purely just set up for the next one. Yep. Which is fine if the second one's a home run, I guess. But I'm still not going to look fondly on this episode at all because of what happened. I don't look more fondly in Redemption 1 after Redemption 2. I just don't, because Redemption 2 is the good one. Oh, it's Mark Twain. Great. Just him, like, talking for so long about nothing, and everyone else talking about so long about nothing. And it came to that point about 30 minutes in where it's like, it's a part one. Nothing's happening here. Nothing's being pushed forward. And I think I called it right on the dot, too. As soon as right before they jumped through the thing, I'm like, credits. Jump through, credits. I'm like, fucking knew it.
And you know what's weird about it, though? We've always hated part ones in media in general, movies, whatever the case is, for the most part. You could argue that, like, the Lord of the Rings trilogy is kind of like a part one, part two, part three, but they all have their own story. And I think this show, originally, Best of Both Worlds Part 1, Redemption 1, we don't think those are like perfect episodes or not are like favorites or anything, but for finales, it wasn't just the cliffhanger. Like, they had a good episode, even though it was set up. There was still stuff in there that made it a good episode. Mm-hmm. And then I look back to Unification 1 and Time's Arrow, and what's the episode? Nothing. It's just a setup. And on both episodes, our audience gave those episodes good grades, and then with Unification, actually had problems with Part 2 as to where I thought Part 2 was much better. Time's Arrow is yet to be determined for us, but we know that our audience gave that first part really good grades. As I'm calculating the patron list, there are a few people that put there, somewhere in the top 10, and I'm just thinking, this has to be banking on Part 2, but maybe not. I just don't know, like, why that's just one of those things that we really don't like and other people are okay with. Like, I don't think there are people out there that are, I love part ones, but maybe it just doesn't bother people as much. I don't know.
I don't get it. I don't get you.
Yeah.
It's, I don't know, it just feels like they're just wasting our time. The episode's got to have a through line narrative on its own and then lead into the part 2 finale. It can't just be the whole thing is just a tease.
Yeah.
What's the enjoyment out of that?
Yeah, especially, and I'll use those two as examples, Unification 1, it's just the reveal of Spock. So it's just 40 minutes of setup for part 2, and then the reveal of Spock.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, I shouldn't even say it is a tease, because it's not a tease. It's fucking boring, and the last 10 seconds are a tease.
Yeah, and then Time's Arrow, an episode where it just seems to be all set up in telling us what's going on with no end goal or anything, and then the to be continued being them jumping through this portal to the past. Okay.
So
who cares?
We're gonna open up and they're gonna be there.
Yeah.
Now, if there was like, if we jump through this, we might die.
They didn't even have that. Yeah.
No, it's just like, okay, we're gonna go where Data is now,
and they're gonna go save him. Like, and that's cool. I guess, at a little bit understand the idea of watching this as a finale. Oh, they're going to go save Data. I can't wait for the show to come back. Like, yeah, that's fine. So maybe a little bit in 2025, the fact that we own the box set and we could, in theory, just watch it right now if we wanted, maybe that hinders it a little bit. But I just go back to Best of Both Worlds Part 1. The whole thing building up Riker, having to take over as captain. Will you make the tough choice? And then at the end, Worf fire. Redemption 1, all the way up to Worf quitting, the Starfleet to go join the Klingons. And also getting his redemption, I think. Where was that in part 2 that he actually got the redemption? I think it was part 1, wasn't it?
Yeah, got in the part 1.
Yeah, so those had things in the episodes that they were building to in that episode that made the cliffhanger work. And then here, it was like, Spock showing up is awesome. That's not, it's like, okay, part 2 should be good then. It's like, okay.
Yeah, and then Time's Arrow, where Data's just talking to this bellboy and making this machine, and then playing, wins a poker game. What happened? Guinan's there, but doesn't know who anyone is yet because it's in the past.
Yeah.
This Mark Twain guy talks in this monologue for 5 minutes straight. It's like,
and the sad part is the Data fish out of water stuff. Him talking to the bellboy and him doing the poker game was probably my favorite parts of that episode, just because at least it's Brent Spiner having fun, and that's it. And it's funny because we didn't do a discussion on that for this reason, because we would just be sitting here bitching about it, so we just didn't do it.
Yeah.
But here we are.
It had to come out. It had to come out.
But thoughts on that will be continued when we watch the Season 6 premiere. So these questions and topics are from our patrons. We do this at the end of the season, and this is actually available to all members of our Patreon. Even free members can submit a topic or question for this discussion. So that's where we're pulling these topics from. Alex, I'll start right with this first one I think is interesting. From Elizabeth. If you could pick any meh episode of season 5 to rewrite, which one would it be?
Imaginary friend.
Yeah.
Just by rewrite, I mean go to that shredder in the corner of the office. Start over. What I would change, I don't know, I would have to sit down for a day and really think about what would make that episode better. Take out a lot of things for the most part, but you?
It's tough because as I look at these episodes that I would consider meh, I'd say I don't even care. That's the thing with like Imaginary Friend. I consider that less than meh, but I don't even care enough to try to salvage that episode. I guess the one thing I would rewrite, I know a lot of people like this episode, The Perfect Mate with Picard and Jean Grey. I think I said this in the discussion, I would probably ditch the whole Picard end of it completely, and I would make it fully a leaning into the goofiness comedy of it, of this pheromone inducing, attractive, charming woman just making everyone on the Enterprise, male and maybe even some female characters, stumble and fawn over her, but none of them are actually going to hook up with her. Now, in the way that it's written in originally, she's actively trying to hook up with everyone. So I'd probably change that as well, where maybe she's a little bit more focused on actually getting to the person that she's supposed to be with, but she can't help but make everyone else infatuated with her. And I would make it much more, because my favorite parts of that episode were in that first half with having fun with Riker, Data, Worf, before getting to Picard and kind of really slowing down and giving an okay story, but not one that I think would have been better than focusing on that.
I would have liked to see her try to get with the Chief, and then Keiko's there, and Chief's like, no, no, no. It could have a fun scene there. But what do you think the resolution would be if it's not Picard, showing his virtuousness? Like, how does it end?
This is purely off the top of my dome. Nameless person on the Enterprise who's part of the crew can't overcome it, tries to actually kidnap her in some way. They have to then save her to get her to this person. Something along those lines. It's silly, but it's something you can just kind of throw in the last act to be like, oh, this happened.
Yeah, I'm thinking TOS, how some red shirts were just expendable, like Corporate Maneuver, like Kirk just gives them that guy. Like, oh, you can go work with little Clint Howard here. Like, okay.
Yeah, 100%. Or I'm thinking of the TOS episode, I can never remember which one it was, but where the whole episode you don't know what the problem is, and then just a guy in the Enterprise comes out with a phaser. And he's like mad at Kirk because he let his son die or something.
Oh, is that the court episode? Or the jettison button? Is that?
Was it Court Martial where that happened?
I want to say it's Court Martial, yeah. Because he edited the tapes or something.
Yeah, he comes out and it's like, oh!
Yeah.
But it had nothing to do with, like, you never would have known this guy existed.
No.
That's what was so great about it. That the whole episode, that's probably why I didn't remember was from that. It's about the court-martial, and then at the end, he just comes out.
Yeah, the guy died, per se, by hitting that button, but he actually lived.
Yeah.
Oh, that was a great episode.
But it was the best reveal because we don't know this character. He just comes out, and it's like, who the hell is that?
Oh, that'd be great. Did we answer your question? Okay. All right, this one's from Justin A. Harwood. One of my highlights for Season 5 is that they finally cracked writing for Troy, giving her some great stuff, but also giving her good stuff more consistently. Do you guys agree she's the most improved character this season? If so, who takes a step back or doesn't move forward in the way you might have liked to see? I'm glad you brought that up, because we totally forgot to talk about Troy in this season, because throughout Seasons 1 through 4, she's just been making a slow climb. But this season, they finally just let her out of the bag, and she's amazing.
100%, I think she's most improved character.
Most improved, yeah.
And really has nothing to do with Marina Sirtis in terms of Seasons 1 through 4. She did her best with what she was given, but here she's finally given stuff, with Power Play, the episodes with Worf and Dorf, and everything. Disaster, Captain Troy. I mean, definitely she has to be the most improved among the regular cast. And then as far as ones who haven't really grown or taken a step back, I do think Dr. Crusher. She does have some great moments in the season. Ethics is probably her biggest one. Mm-hmm. But overall, she has really just faded into the background and a little bit even into obscurity, which is interesting to me because I always thought Wesley was sort of a crutch for her. Like, oh, she's Wesley's mother. That's the role. But almost it seems like since Wesley's been gone, she's been given less. Where I feel like it could have been an opportunity to, who else is Dr. Crusher? That's awesome. You're a mom. That's awesome. What else is Dr. Crusher? And they really haven't given her much besides ethics, which is why I love that episode. But besides that, she's just kind of fallen back.
Yeah, besides ethics, a little bit in violations.
Oh, and cause and effect.
Cause and
She's a big
cause and
focus
effect,
in that.
Yeah. Definitely. Maybe because she had like one of the strongest episodes last season, it feels like she's taken a step back, but she's had some good moments here. A little bit. She's one of the driving factors in Iborg, to where me at first, I'm like, fuck this thing. You know, it's a hive mind. Get it out of here. And then like
Alex said, Borg, let them die.
I did, and then I had to look at myself. I'm like, oh, you idiot, you idiot. But we talked about this because I knew people were going to bring that up. Where it's like, oh, you were so against Kirk being against the Klingons, and then you were okay being against the Borg here. It's the 5 seasons of TNG growing with this Klingon. It's the fact that this Search for Spock villain was like a rogue Klingon. It's not specifically said, but it basically is. And we've learned a lot more about Klingon culture. And when it comes to the Borg culture, it's a hive mind. It's one thing. But as we learn more about them, I realized I was wrong. It can be separated. So in a way, I was wrong, but in a way, I'm right. So
Is it fair to say you saw them as kind of like the, like a Gears of War villain of like they're not human, they don't have any actual self-awareness, they're just this hive mind, and then Hugh, like it did for everyone on the Enterprise, convinced you otherwise, basically?
Yeah, and I'm sure maybe people in Starfleet viewed Klingons as the same way. So I'll take the L on that one. So and then we met Hugh, and I'm like, oh, they can be individuals if separated. And just like, yeah.
Now, I still don't think just Hugh and what we saw here means that, like, if any of the villains of Star Trek have been introduced to, the Borg is absolutely the most, like, non-human, in a way.
Yeah.
Even though they all look humanoid. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to feel bad if a Borg gets blown up, like I would. Well, to be honest, I don't know if I would feel bad with any of these. I mean, it depends on the context, really. Mm-hmm. It's the stormtrooper effect, right? Basically, they're like a bunch of stormtroopers.
Yeah.
A bunch of stormtroopers is basically how I feel about them. Mm-hmm. Now, you take one of them, and you take off their mask, and it becomes John Boyega. Okay, sorry. All right, we can move on.
Yeah.
Oh, but you never said. So if it wasn't would you agree Dr. Crusher, or do you think there's another character that you wish would have grown more?
Chief.
Chief, yeah. You're really high on him. Yeah.
I am. And he was only in like 4 episodes this season.
And he was great, yeah. Power play.
He was great when he was in him, but without him, especially after, episodes like The Wounded last season where it falls on a Chief's shoulders to carry this episode.
Yeah.
And then this season, it's like, nope. But I'm glad Troy got the spotlight.
This one's from Enigmatic Penguin. Fans widely consider this the golden age of TNG, but for you, has anything about it actually gotten worse since season 1? For me, it's the music. I think the music is the easy one to say because everyone kind of points out that. I get it.
I've noticed a lot of episodes were completely silent, but when making edits, it makes it really nice.
Yeah, I would say for me, and this isn't necessarily, I don't even know if it's something the show could avoid, but in season 1, yeah, you're comparing it to TOS and everything, but in season 1, the show's brand new. There's been a lot of repetitiveness lately, especially. Maybe that's part of the reason why I felt season 5, definitely had a lot to get through. Just the stories themselves. I really like how Star Trek can do anything. I really feel like it could tell any story it wants. But at the end of the day, it's a show about a ship in space. And sometimes, watching Data and Geordi figure out what this anomaly is going to blow up the ship. And it's kind of like, I've seen this for 5 seasons. And, come up with something different. But it's hard to come up with something different. I get that. And then even away from the technobabble side of it, even just stories. Like we had Hero Worship with Data and a kid, immediately followed by Worf and his kid, and like where they both go have the daycare set, and it's just some of the episodes have been starting to feel like almost like I've seen around 100 episodes of this show. Yeah, more than 100 episodes. It's kind of like, damn, I feel like I've seen this episode before. I mean, you even commented about one of them. You're like, this is an exact like season 1 with the lightning. They did it this season with something that made you think of it. I don't remember.
That's cost of living. Undetectable parasites devour the ship. Yeah. That's where it's like, are we fucking kidding me? Are we doing this? Now, listen, I respect the science that Geordi and Data are talking about. I get it. I understand it. There's a fandom out there, and there's probably fact checkers, and they probably worked with people that are heavily involved in science and all that, where it's for the most part very accurate. I get it, I understand it. The show's not just for all the dramatic storytelling that we enjoy. It appeals to all sorts of kind of people. I know people are very into that, but the problem is I'm not. So, but I get it, and so, some stories like that are very repetitive, and the crutch where it always needs to, like the formula of the A plot, B plot. Anytime they've gone away from that, it's been stellar, fantastic. Like it's like breaking the mold of a generic wrestling match. Like do something different. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like go way out of left field. Like inner light, conundrum,
Cause and effect.
cause and effect. Is that like get rid of that wall? Get rid of that hive mind wall of writers and just give it to one guy. And the script consultants and all that. Of course, there's staff writers and all that. But just put it in the hands of one guy. You get these 6 people working together, and they just all have that same boring formula, the A and B plot. And I think this season, for the most part, has proved my theory right, except for maybe 1 or 2 episodes I can't think of, where the wall of writers is just it's not good.
Yeah, I think the one exception was Masterpiece Society, but I like that a lot more than the Consensus. But yeah, I agree. Also, thinking back to TOS as an example, they rarely had B plots, and when they did, it was because Kirk and someone else was down on a planet, and they had to show what the Enterprise was doing.
Yeah.
That was really the only time there was a B plot. Like there was no, here's the plot. Now let's go see what her is dealing with in her quarters. Like that did not happen, and that show was longer per episode. So you could have just one main plot. There's good examples, though, of side plots. I think a good one is Masterpiece Society, where Geordi teams up with Hannah Bates from this planet, and where they actually got me interested in what's going on and what's the problem with this planet they have to solve. And Geordi finds out actually his visor, what they use in his visor, can help solve what's going on this planet. And isn't that ironic? Because they're all about eugenics and making the perfect people, but it's actually from his disability, his visor. So that's how you do it well. You make it interesting, you make it different, but I get it. You gotta pump out these episodes. It's easy to go back to the well of, here's our main story, but we need some more filler, so I don't know, there's ooze coming out of the walls or something, and then you just do whatever.
It can't be done well when done a little bit different, or where they come together. The episode where, not this season, but the previous one, where Geordi was captured by the Romulans and put out, and then Data's figuring it out on his own, and then they come together at the end. Another example is the Barclay episode, where it ends with they're moving the barrels without gloves, where it was 2 separate things going on. What's going on with the ship here? And then it all comes together at the end. It can be done well. But the episode this season, the Majel Barrett episode, where just watching them figure it out completely separate from her whole story is just just terrible. And I was expecting, like, okay, this ooze thing is now going to infect the holodeck, which they've done before. Something similar's happened, whatever, with the Minuet episode in season 1. But like all these nightmare characters, like they're already nightmare characters before any problems. But what if these things infected it, and then they went like super nightmare, and like this kid's in there running this holodeck, and it becomes like, I don't know, like It or something.
Yeah,
like super scary horror movie type stuff. But
I think that's probably would be a good your rewrite.
That's my rewrite.
Yeah,
I just had to think for a bit. That's my rewrite. All right, this one's from Kevin H. What actor or actress would you love to have seen guest star in an episode of TNG? That's an interesting one. I would love to fucking see Kurt Russell. Probably too much. Too much money.
That would be wild.
If Kurt Russell was like a captain on another ship or an admiral, and he came over to the Enterprise, and he just had that, that suave, tough guy type stuff. I'm like,
even a Kelsey Grammer type small cameo would be amazing.
Yes.
I'm even thinking that exact episode. It beams over. That's awesome. It's Kelsey Grammer, but it beams over. And
it's Kurt Russell. I'd be fucking pissed that he wasn't in the episode more. Though.
Imagine they show his name in the credits at the beginning, and
I would have flipped shit.
Because unlike Kelsey Grammer, I think the whole episode you'd have been going, "Where's Kurt Russell? Where's Kurt Russell?"
Yeah. Where in this episode, I was able to forget about Kelsey Grammer.
My answer is Elizabeth Perkins. No further questions.
From Lute Narsbar. Now, I'm reading this because when I first read this question, because the way it's laid out here, I thought it said, if you were Riker, who would you blow and why? But it actually says, if you were Riker, who would you blow up and why?
Very important up.
Very important up. I missed that. If I was Riker.
Specifically Riker.
Who would I blow up? Oh man, no. Anyone in the whole Star Trek franchise, or just from this season?
You would go to Starfleet headquarters.
I would go back in time and redirect the Borg from blowing up those innocent ships, those 30-something ships, and just send it straight to San Francisco and blow them the fuck out.
Now, the entire Earth might be a casualty, but that's something we're willing to accept.
I'm clearly fine with that.
Evan Guthrie, which season 5 episode do you think was the biggest missed opportunity as far as concept versus execution?
Oh.
So for me, it's an easy one. It's unification. And by concept, it's Spock in the Next Generation. Like, you could do anything with that, and what they did, we still enjoyed it as a two-parter, but what they did came off so much like Star Trek 6 is coming out. Here is Leonard Nimoy to walk around and talk for a while. And did we get good moments out of that? Yes, especially in part 2, and moments with Data, moments with Picard. I say especially part 2, he literally shows up at the end of part 1. But even if you did only have him for part 2, that's fine, because I think I remember reading that, with his schedule and stuff, they actually filmed part 2 first because they had him available. You could do some a little bit more interesting than to separate Data and Picard from the rest of the crew and have Spock only with them and dealing with the Sela stuff. I would love to see Spock on the Enterprise, on the bridge.
Yeah.
Talking to Worf and whoever the fuck else is on there. Talking to them and maybe even being, I don't think they have like a science officer that's, in the spots that Spock was in TOS, but something similar where kind of that area where Data will go on the computer back there on the bridge, like have him back there looking something up. I mean, talk about nostalgia, that would be great.
No, I totally agree with that. And see him just walk on the Enterprise and, look around, like how different it is, interact with everybody. Yeah, that's a total missed opportunity. I think I gotta go with the game. I mean, we already talked about it in that episode, but the idea of Wesley being a goody two-shoes and trying to save the Enterprise that way, as opposed to this, this game where instead of this game, it's just it's drugs. I mean, the game basically is a drug.
This one's from Greg. What was the favorite aspect about an episode that you overall disliked? And conversely, what was an aspect about an episode that you disliked from an episode that you overall liked? That's a good one.
Okay. So favorite aspect from an episode I didn't like, and least favorite aspect about an episode I did like.
Yes. Do you have an answer? You can go first if you have an answer.
Oh, this is gonna be.
Okay, I'll go first.
Yeah, you go first.
For one of them, at least, I already talked about it. I think the Guinan stuff, an imaginary friend, probably saved that episode from an E tier for me. Not necessarily even that the Guinan stuff is amazing, but just having what I think is a nice, cute Guinan backstory in that episode that has already left my brain. That would definitely be as far as an episode I disliked, something I liked in there. And then something I disliked in an episode I otherwise liked was what I felt was the rushed ending of Cause and Effect. And I talked a lot more about that in that episode discussion. But I think if you could have just reworked the last 10-ish minutes of that episode, it could have really hit that home. Kind of similar to, because of course everyone's going to disagree with me about the Cause and Effect thing. So kind of similar about how everyone disagreed about the Yesterday's Enterprise of like, oh, that ending just felt a little bit blunt and like, oh, it's over. We, could have had that big moment. Kind of how I felt about Cause and Effect. So that would be my two answers.
I guess in Newground, I really enjoyed the Worf and Dorf type stuff, but I did not care for Geordi and the crew testing out this new thing because it just
The Wave?
The Wave, yeah. It was very... Besides like a nice moment with Worf rescuing his kid at the end, the whole thing was very meh. So now something I disliked in an episode. After thinking about it, and I've seen some people point this out, I loved Picard's speech in the first duty, and I love that episode, but I didn't like how he said, I'm going to tell him if you don't, because it takes away the choice from Wesley, because what other choices does he have? Now, if he made that choice himself to do the right thing, now, if Picard just said, do what you want, blah, 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 but, I'll know. I think that would have been a bit stronger. It's still a great speech, but, yeah.
That's fair. And then, okay, this is a fun one. Sean Indigo, after 5 seasons of TNG, which characters are your 3 favorite overall up to this point?
Of all of TNG?
Of all in TNG, your top 3. And they don't have to be in any order if you don't want, but just top 3.
Number 1. Pulaski. No. Number 1 is Worf, by far.
For me, so
Yeah, you go.
the problem for me is spot 1 and 2, not in any order, but the first 2 spots is Worf and Data. Those are the 2.
Yeah.
And then
yeah.
spot 3 is where it gets very, very tough if you're going to cut it off at 3, because I put Picard in there. I used to would have definitely put Crusher in there, but probably not so anymore. But honestly, low key, I could put Guinan there. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if you said you could put Chief in there. Right? I mean, just off the top of my dome, I would probably say Picard. I mean, he's the glue of the show. He's the heart of the show, and I love him.
It's Worf, Data, Picard for me.
The Worf, Data, Picard, yeah, probably the same. But low key, Guinan. I mean, when she came in the second season, I'm thinking like Whoopi Goldberg in Star Trek. Like I knew she was in this show before starting it, but I was like, Whoopi Goldberg in Star Trek. Like, you know, that's okay. Let's see how this is. This is kind of odd, but no, I totally forgot she's someone that I already knew, like celebrity wise. I mean, Guinan is one of my favorite characters of the franchise up to this point, and the only reason that I struggle to put her in that 3 is that she's not in every episode. She's not a main character, so it's tough to do that when you have Picard, who I obviously love so much. So yeah, those are probably the 3.
Chief was definitely going to be pretty close, but after him not being in the season much at all, and the one episode he is in, he's being possessed by this evil demon prisoner. Like, not his fault, but I would like to see some more of him. And the Picard episodes this season were just fantastic. Darmok, the Inner Light, and just even the Perfect Mate a little bit. Actually, all of Picard in this season. I don't think there's any bad Picard episodes.
This might be one of his best seasons.
This is Picard's season.
I mean, and Patrick Stewart, from an acting perspective, he gets so many opportunities here. Although, I don't know, it's hard to top all the way back in Season 2, Ensigns of Command, the cutting off the Shellyak.
That was Season 3.
Oh, I say Season 2. Sorry.
Season 3, Episode 2.
Season 3, Episode 2.
Not to go back, but I think that was the moment when Picard arrived.
Yeah.
That's the moment. Because I don't think anything happened in, what was it? She had the baby in the Season 3. Troy had the baby in the Season 3 opener?
No, that was Season 2.
That was Season 2?
Season 3 was Dr. Stubbs.
Okay, yeah, that was Dr. Stubbs. And I don't remember anything specific about Picard in that one. But
Yeah.
but Picard arrived in Ensigns of Command. And, oh, God, that's why I put that in my edit I made. I'm like, that's my favorite.
And the B plot, too. Because the main plot was Data down on the planet.
That's true. That's true, yeah.
But just him looking through the laws, the bylaws, and then...
And when he figures it out, he's walking down the steps all proud of himself. Like, call the Shellyak.
Yeah. I choose the Grisellas.
They should be out of hibernation in 6 months.
Yeah. Oh, a species that has hibernation. Grisellas. How creative.
I didn't even put that together.
I'll just say now, there's a lot of questions, obviously, about Deep Space Nine. We're going to do a separate video that's a little bit more of kind of what we did at the beginning of TNG, where we did just an overall kind of preview of like, what do we know, what are we looking forward to. But I do want to just address maybe 1 or 2 here, since a lot of people did ask about it that aren't necessarily like big questions or anything that we'll already cover in that video. So this one's still kind of focused on TNG. So this is from Pokesaurus. Having seen a successful transition from TOS to TNG, how much of TNG would you like to see in DS9? Specifically, but not limited to, what races, characters, universe-wide, plot lines, etc. would you like to see fleshed out with new characters? You can go first
That's
if
a
you
good
want.
point. Similar to how TNG fleshed out Klingons more, especially with Worf, I would like another species to be added to that DS9 list. What species? I don't know. Would it be crazy to have a Romulan on board? A Cardassian, Ferengi? I don't know. Just something. And, like, what's the crew dynamic going to be? Kirk was kind of a go-getter. Picard's very virtuous. What is that captain going to be like? That's not going to be... It's not going to be a carbon copy of one of them. On how wildly different. And, like, a whole brand new crew. I'm excited to even, like, think about it. Like, all the personalities and relationships. And people have said DS9 was made with my blood.
Your DNA, yeah.
My DNA, yeah. So I'm very curious as to what that means.
Yeah.
And I know it's kind of, like, back then it was cool, like, oh, dark and gritty. And, like, I love dark and gritty, but also I do love hope and optimism. It's that, I don't know, do you like Man of Steel or do you like Superman from 1978? But I like them both. So
Yeah, I think that, first of all, to address what you're saying, I can't even in this point in my brain imagine another captain outside of Kirk and Picard. Going into this journey, I knew Kirk and Picard. Of them, culturally, I knew them.
Yeah.
I didn't know any other captains, unless you count Chris Pine. But I didn't know any other captains, and the idea that we're going to have several new captains on this journey, but specifically Deep Space Nine getting our first non-Kirk or Picard, I can't even imagine what that's going to be like. In terms of the villain thing you were talking about, if I had to guess, I think we're going to see a lot more Cardassians. That's just my guess based on the aura people have put out, the vibes people have put out, and the fact that they were kind of introduced in the middle of this show. I feel like it makes sense, with them.
And I think people have commented that the Borg being introduced in season 3, like, oh, this is the start of DS9 or whatever. I'm like, okay, so I'm guessing the Borg show up at
I
some
think
point.
a big one for that, too, for Cardassians was the Wounded. I mean, dozens upon dozens of, you're going to love DS9, you're going to love DS9, specifically on the Wounded. So, which was their introduction, right? I think so. So maybe they showed up once before. No, that was that was an introduction.
That was their introduction.
Yeah. But what I want from the show specifically, just without getting too much into it, in the same way that TNG is not TOS light, it's its own thing. I want DS9 to feel completely like its own thing. It's in the same world. It's has the same species, all those things. But I want DS9 to be something completely different from what I've gotten from TNG. In the same way that what this has been completely different. Because if we get to a point where it starts feeling like a light version of the previous show, what's the point?
Yeah.
So that's what I think makes Star Trek so great, is that, it's a weird comparison, but like you think about Star Wars, every single thing Star Wars makes is like tainted in a way or has to deal with the original trilogy. Like that is what they're basing it off of. Star Trek can do whatever the hell it wants. And we were having a discussion about this similar in the Bridge Crew Discord recently when we were talking about like what to do with Star Trek and Star Wars in the future. And I was saying the thing about Star Trek is like you could literally just do whatever you want in this universe. Now I haven't seen all of Star Trek, I don't know, but I just feel like you could go forward 12 centuries and make whatever you want. Like, it doesn't matter. You can use the same stuff, the same generic framework of the universe, and use these species and everything. But there's just, at least up to this point in the franchise, there's not really that much baggage with this franchise. There is no, dark side, light side shit to deal with, and no lineages and all this shit to deal with. It's like, you can just make whatever you want. And I'm glad that TNG wasn't, Kirk's son is the ensign or some weird shit. Like, it was just its own thing.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, just completely separate it from the whole, from everything. Make it its own thing. Have a couple light connections, similar to how TNG has some light connections to TOS. Some very light connections.
Cameos and callbacks.
Yeah. And I just don't want it to turn into the Marvel Disney shows where it's just the same thing, just slightly different.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I look at, you didn't watch it, but I watched the series Andor, and that's like lightly connected to, because, Cassian Andor from Rogue One and all that, so it's lightly connected, but in all reality, it's its own Star Wars show because it's completely different from all the other shit. It's not connected to the Force and all that. But so yeah, I just wanted to be a completely what you said.
And I feel like I'm not even a huge Star Wars fan, but even I feel the vibes of the most generally liked things of the newer Star Wars is when they do an Andor or they do something Rogue One. It's still gonna be connected, but it doesn't have all this baggage that you have to deal with, especially in the big movies, which we're obviously talking about a difference here between big theatrical movies and a television series. But even with the TV series, I mean, that's how I feel about it. I don't want to see the same thing over and over. You did your thing. That's why you're making a new show. Especially in the middle of TNG making a new show. Like, there'd be no point to make a second TNG while TNG is on, so I'm hoping it's different.
Yeah, just complete tonal shift. Like, definitely, the ship's still going through space, but, A plot, B plot, like, I just want it to be a complete fucking, every episode's a crapshoot of something. Now, I'm sure they're going to stick to the formula sometimes, but I just want it completely off the wall. Go crazy.
Yeah, we'll get more into DS9 here soon. But as for TNG, great season overall. Are you ready to get into our top 10 lists?
I'm ready.